Welcome to K. Keith Photographer's Digital Images Techniques and Tips for the Novice Photographer. And now, coming at you almost live from Kansas City, USA, here's your host, Ken Keith.
Hi everyone, and welcome back. A big hello to those of you in the local users group and those of you who are joining us on the Photoblog, Vimeo, and YouTube just to see what's going on, and we welcome you, and hopefully it'll be a nice learning experience for you. So today I thought we'd chat a bit about focus stacking, which is getting some buzz in the media these days, and even though the technique isn't a particularly new one. You know, like HDR, focus stacking, which is sometimes referred to as image stacking, is similar in this respect, that multiple images are used to realize that which we can't create with only one capture, and in this case it's extending the depth of field. Almost all pro photographers shoot in aperture priority mode to control depth of field, usually a shallow one for things like portraits and a deeper zone of apparent sharpness many times for landscapes. Now what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to refer you to Adorama TV on YouTube and watch that little bouncy Brit Gavin Hoey in episode 107 for a demonstration of focus stacking in a landscape scenario. Now I'm going to do one for you in the up close and personal range. So let's get started. Okay, here we are in Photoshop CS5 Extended, and I want to mention that if you have CS4 and up, the software will work the same, and if you don't have Photoshop, then you have some options as far as some other software that you can get. One's called Helicon Focus, one's called Zarine Stacker, and another one's called Combine ZP, and you do have to pay for these programs too. They're not free. Alright, so I've taken some lovely photos, as a matter of fact 4 of them, of some AA batteries. Now some people say, well, this is a demonstration of focus stacking in macro mode, and indeed I'm using a macro lens here, but not everybody has a macro lens, but most lenses today will close focus. So the specifics here are that the f-stop is 1/16. I've adjusted my one studio strobe to produce that setting, and I've chosen that because all lenses will at least stop down to f16, and many of them will be f22. And I'm at a magnification ratio of 1:4, or 1/4 life size. Once again, I've chosen this because if you don't have a macro lens, you probably have a lens that will close focus down into the range of 1:3 or 1:4. So I thought that this would be a pretty good real-world demonstration for you. And so in the first picture now, just one other thing. These AA batteries, they're about a ½ an inch in diameter, and I have placed them on a slight angle, one behind the other, and each one of them is 1/4 of an inch behind the one in front. So you can see here, this is critically focused on the first battery. The second battery, yeah, we can read the big printing. It's a little fuzzy though. You know, it's not far away. You can read this on the side of the first battery. The focus point is actually this demarcation line here between the silver and blue. But you notice in the second battery that it's very, very difficult to read the fine print, as it were, and that's one of the reasons that I've chosen this as a subject. And then as you go back to battery 3 and battery 4, a different brand, you can make out the big words. They're very fuzzy. You can't really read anything down here. This is very small type. Tough to read anything here, and it's virtually impossible beyond that. The next photograph, we've focused right here again on the second battery. We can read what's on the second battery. We can read the big words here on the first one. The middle size type, I guess you'd say, is legible but a bit fuzzy, and the small type is impossible to read. And so it goes battery 3 and battery 4. So now what we want to do, when you're shooting this, it's imperative really to shoot on a tripod. You want to set your aperture and leave it alone. You don't want not going to have any problems if you just set it on one thing, like F16 all the way through. Don't mix them up. And I think it's handy, of course, also to shoot in RAW like I always do, and in manual focus, rather to focus critically rather than letting the camera focus for you. And then we're going to be in manual mode all the way through, and you're going to take a series of pictures from the closest focus point to the furthest. Alright. If you want to make any edits, well, you can go ahead and do that in RAW, and then use your sync feature to apply that to all the image. Now once we get into Photoshop, we're going to move up to File and Scripts and load files into stacks. And once this dialog pops up, we're going to click on Add Open Files, and here are the 4 that we have here. And then I'm also going to attempt to automatically align image sources. Now, even though you're on a tripod, this is a really important thing to do. You may have some slight bit of movement, and we want things to be as critically sharp as possible, so be sure and check this box. You can do this one, but it's really not necessary. And then I'm going to click OK. And we're going to watch it do its thing. Now that's pretty good. Now we want to select, once it's finished, we want to go ahead and select all your layers over here. So the bottom one has been highlighted. I'm going to hold my Shift key and click on the top one to select all of those layers. Then back to the Edit menu, and then once we get to the Edit menu, we're going to Auto Blend Layers. This dialog comes up, stack image, and check seamless tones and colors, and click OK. And then we're just going to let the algorithms work in that software. Now it's done its thing, and you'll notice over here that a layer mask has been added to each one of the layers. And so what it's doing is it's masking out the unsharp areas in each photograph. Now, could you do this manually? Yeah, I think it'd be tough, rather tedious. I've never tried it. Not going to. I'm not even curious about that. So you can see now, and I haven't done any sharpening to these images either before importing them into Photoshop, or I haven't sharpened this. I still haven't made a final composite, and I'm going to do that by just going to flatten image, and then if I need to sharpen up a little bit or make some sort of tonal change, I can do that. You'll also notice that there's just some little bit of artifacting around, some places where you need to crop. Be sure and study your image very good, because you may need to go back and actually make more images. Some focus stacking tutorials I've seen where a fellow was doing one on a flower. He had about 15 images, so he really walked that focus back in very small increments. In this one, I think we have a pretty good result by doing a little bit of extra sharpening here, maybe some high pass. Then we'll have a critically sharp image from front to back. So I think you're going to enjoy this technique, and please use it. Now let's go on to just one other thing. Oh, here's a photograph of a film era lens, a little Nikon 28, which would be equivalent in digital now to our 18mm lenses. And you don't see this anymore. So as you're thinking about maybe Gavin Hoey's tutorial and how he's working with focus stacking, we used to do what we'd call hyperfocal focusing, or the hyperfocal distance, and you can find that, but you can't see that on your lenses anymore. You can get some charts, and there's a website called Depth of Field Master, DOF Master, that you can call up and get some depth of field and hyperfocal distance information for your particular camera and lens. But in this one, once again, this is just for some historical perspective. If I were out shooting a landscape and I needed things to be critically sharp from the near foreground to a distance in the background, I would set my camera and lens to this configuration. You can see we have your f-stop scales, and you have a dot for your point of focus, and then you also have some little colored lines which indicate the f-stop. There's f11, and the little orange red one is f22. And in this case, if my point of focus was approximately 4 feet, let's go right up here, and I shot at f11, my depth of field would be somewhere between, say 2.75 feet and somewhere just beyond 7 feet. However, if I set my lens to the hyperfocal distance, I would stop down, for example, to f22 and put my little infinity mark opposite f22. And now if we read our scale, we can see that if I focus on 4 feet, then my total depth of field is going to extend from just under 2 feet to infinity. That's a great depth of field. But try this with a digital lens, it's not going to work so well. Well, anyway, I hope that's not too boring for you, especially since most of you may have never done a film or shot it, or been alive to do it, or had an interest at that point, and you've shot digital all your life. But I thought it might be kind of fun to take a quick look back. So I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial. Keep shooting, keep experimenting around, try this focus stacking, and you'll enjoy it and produce some nice results. So we'll talk again next time. Take care now.